So hopefully those videos will have given you something to think about, maybe a bit of inspiration. I certainly felt inspired listening to Amanda and Sally and Anna about the work they've been doing with Appreciative Inquiry. So we're going to be joined for a few minutes for a panel discussion to reflect on that. I'm hoping we've still got Margaret with us as well, and the T-Rex team, and we're joined by Alison and Emma as well. Yes, yay, hi, hello everyone. So can I head to you first, Emma, for your kind of reflections?
Yeah, absolutely. I think firstly, I would say I also just feel so inspired by these 3 videos. Thank you so much to Lindsay, Margaret, and the Thames Valley team for sharing all of those interesting stories. I think my takeaways are the HERO acronym from Margaret, which is just as a person who coaches alongside being a doctor, just something that I will now, I think, involve in my coaching process. Very much enjoyed the maxim, what we appreciate appreciates, from Lindsay, and I think somebody had commented in the chat about how what we focus on and what we're intentional about is what continues. And then also this question about what was your contribution to the care from the Thames Valley team. It's just a really beautifully worded question, and I think what it does is expand some awareness for people when they hear that question about how they are valued and what they're actually adding. So yes, this space of coaching and bringing Appreciative Inquiry together is just absolutely fascinating. And for me, NHS people are our biggest asset for patient care, and the more that we can bring in coaching and coaching tools, then the better. And some of those things that I really love to bring in are things around unconditional positive regard, which is a coaching kind of principle, and also curiosity, non-judgment when having those conversations. And I had a question for Margaret, please. So my question is, how can we bring these things into the healthcare space? Because for me, coaching is also about the relationship over a long time. And actually, when that builds, that's when some of the magic starts to happen. And I just wondered how you would see coaching being for healthcare professionals.
Right. So great to see you all. It's really, really special to be here. And I appreciate being part of this. And I think I know I'm not the only one not living in England right now. You had someone earlier, but I did spend 6 years in the UK when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, went to London Business School, worked at ICI and a few other things. So I feel very much at home with all of you and happy to be here. You know, I'm involved at really in all levels, because healthcare is one place where coaching principles work at every level. So patient facing, clinician, and leadership. And what I've been trying to do over the last 5 or 6 years is to show how those same principles, you know, well-being, coaching, and leadership have actually resting on a common core of elements, like a periodic table. And so if you bring them in at those 3 levels, you make you know, you shift the compass direction towards thriving and growth and away from languishing and burnout. And so it's a really big topic, and there's a lot of opportunities. And so in an ideal world, everyone in healthcare would go through a coach training program. Everyone, you know, 4 days, that would change everything. So if I was going to tell you, like, what do you want, what's the fastest way to do that? Because it is a burnout intervention all on its own. Because when you learn to become a coach, you get coached yourself. You dig deeper around what you want, and which is not on the surface, because we run around meeting all the demands on ourselves, and we don't really touch our own hearts and our own values as adults. You know, we've got kids and jobs, and you start to get clearer on what you want. You get clearer on what your strengths are. You get clearer on where you want to, you know, where you need to grow, right? those three things, where am I going and why does that matter? So the motivation, the confidence, which is the psychological resources, and then the growth, which is stepping up to what's challenging and using it as your force for growth. So whatever's causing stress and strain, you don't have to look any further. It's right there. So that's what I would do. If I had a gazillion dollars, I would just do that. I would just say, everybody, 4 days out of the next year, that would change everything. It really would change everything. Okay, but that's not going to happen. I don't think. I mean, maybe somebody there in your audience has a gazillion dollars and can make that happen. So then we have to chip away at it here and there, here and there, and here and there. So, we just submitted a grant to the U.S. government that wanted burnout interventions in rural and underserved populations. So we're working with the healthcare system. This is my Well Coaches group, not the Institute. With a group in Montana, which is very rural and has Indian reservations. And that model is also happening at Mass General Hospital. So in that model, you're training internal coaches, physicians, nurse practitioners, to be internal coaches, to be available to coach internally. And so that's probably the second most scalable, because then you have this internal group, and then you still have to pay for their time to coach. They can't do this for free, because when they do it for free, then they're just busier, right? And it's more in more demand. So that's happening in quite a few places. And then we so I've got group leadership coaching going in multiple places, including 2 groups at the Met Police right now, which is going through hell, as you probably know. And so it's been an interesting week, understanding just how hard their world is. And so the group approach is more scalable. It costs the same as coaching one person if you coach a whole group over a year, and they get the group dynamic. You can integrate peer coaching so that they pair up. I'm not using a curriculum particularly because I'm finding that with the pandemic, people don't have the space to necessarily be engaged, and I've got to go through something and I've got to pass something. So I've kind of leaned back, and I just sort of read the group what topic would be good for them right now. So yeah, so and then on the patient side, we're working on getting reimbursement for the health and well-being coach. The American Medical Association has approved reimbursement codes. We were just in front of the panel for the 4th time last week. We have another round or 2 to go until they're fully reimbursed. But the goal there is to put the coach on the healthcare team. So there'll be a professional coach in primary care, in oncology, in rehab, in surgery, in obesity. The thing about coaching, whether it's burnout or patient health or leadership, it's the same process. It's definitely different context, and there's definitely other expertises you need. So yeah, so I think it's one of the most amazing opportunities to help healthcare is with the coaching modality, because it's about hope, it's about positivity, it's about growth. The way you handle adversity in life, I guess I need to stop. I'm sorry, I'm going on too long. The way you handle adversity in life is that you can grow. That's how you get through it. Resilience is part of it, but you actually think you're getting stronger. The post-traumatic growth is happening. That's a bigger construct than resilience. And when you've got support to grow, that makes all the difference in adversity.
I think that's we could keep talking, couldn't we? I think that's the idea of us all being trained in coaching is actually such a good one. And actually, why aren't those skills taught kind of as part of medical training? And actually, as we were listening to your video, Adrian just said, I need to get trained as a coach. He was literally kind of talking about that. So yeah,
I may be in touch.
Alison's been watching. She's actually sitting right next to us, just right there.
Yes. We had your name before, Emma. I noticed.
Sorry. So as our we're good now. Sorry, I'm unmuting. As our kind of resident AI expert in the room and listening to that, what were your thoughts? I'm sort of looking at her and looking at the screen. I don't know where to look.
Hi everyone, sorry that was my unmuting error there. Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say that how sad I am that Lindsay isn't in the room with us, because she was originally going to be able to attend and then she couldn't make it. But also to acknowledge Suzanne and Tim, I know are listening, and they're from appreciating people who gave us, you know, the training to make us that experts that we might be considered to be now. So I know that you're out there. But I think what I'd like to say is that I would definitely add in the principle of reframing, because I actually agree with Adrian. It doesn't matter how you frame your questions in some settings, the group is going to give you the negatives that's going to come into the room, and therefore as a practitioner that can be it can be quite a powerful force, and as an AI practitioner you have to have a tool to kind of stop that and to change the direction of the conversation. So the idea, and actually it's quite powerful to let people get the negativity out in the room. It's that similar thing where you get the flip chart out and you ask everyone what they want to get out of the day, because once they've said it, they can kind of relax into listening to what else is going to be said today. But reframing is about acknowledging the problems, but then parking them and saying, okay, that's not good. What does good look like? Or how would you like it to look? Or, you know, what are the techniques that we're going to use to overcome those problems? So reframing is something that I would put in the core principles of appreciative inquiry as well. So for the TREX team, the question that I'd like to ask you guys is, I mean, early on, when we began to practice at BCH, we tried to kind of put the principles and the actual training around AI into the conversations, and we kind of tried to say, look at this great stuff, this is what we're going to be doing. And it was met with, you know, I think the word that I'm looking for is credibility. How do you get credibility around this process? Because we were even told, you know, kind of, well, you can do that if you want to, just don't tell anybody that that's what you're doing. You know, it's kind of hide that light under a bushel somewhere, but just do it. And to be fair, I mean, I definitely do that in some situations. I'm just choosing the questions that I'm choosing based on appreciative inquiry principles, but I'm not necessarily sharing the methodology. So I wanted to ask you guys, perhaps both on an organizational level and then at a team level, how do you deal with that kind of creating credibility around this methodology?
I'm happy to start, but because essentially what you'll find across the 3 hospitals here, because we're actually all in 3 different hospitals, is a very different approach. So in our hospital, it was very grassroots. It was very us leading it as a maternity team, and still is. And you know, you'll get told it's soft data. I think you need to keep plowing through. And what you'll find in perhaps Milton Keynes is that there is much more executive buy-in, and I'm sure the team will talk about that. And again, with Amanda, there's much more executive buy-in. And I wonder if that helps to open doors more in terms of credibility, because if your leaders believe in it, then it's easier. But I think as a team where we're based, we just keep going. I remember turning to one of our obstetricians and saying, I don't think we can do this because COVID happened. And Rebecca Black, who's on the call today, said, Sally, we can't afford not to do this. This is when we need it more than ever. So you're doing it for your team. You're not doing it for the data. However, I know that we will have conversations in the future, particularly with what Chris had mentioned, which is looking for the metrics that will help other people to understand it. And fundamentally, we live in the Safety One culture. And perhaps part of what we do is going to need to be reframing things and changing our language so that other people in the Safety One culture can understand it. I'll hand over to the other guys.
Thank you.
So we work at Milton Keynes, Anna and I, and as Sally said, we're very lucky that actually, well, we've sort of had 2 significant injections of appreciative inquiry training really at Milton Keynes Hospital by 2 different people, by Suzanne, who is on the call, hi Suzanne, and by another lady called Belinda Dewar that some of you may have heard about, who works up in Scotland, and I think because of that, because we've had multiple exposures, if you like, we have had really amazing buy-in, to use Sally's words, from the exec team, which has given us a huge amount of credibility. But interestingly, we've not had to use that. So probably, I'd say there's 4 or 5 of us that are very much out on the wards using a priesthood inquiry just as part of our day-to-day life, and I don't think any of us have ever had to sort of say, well, you know, because the bosses say, but maybe that's known. I don't know. It'd be an interesting question to ask, actually. But I think it's interesting because as you were asking the question, I thought, oh no, I'm not credible. But actually, I can't change anybody else. I can only change me, and I think that's the way. So even just today at lunchtime, we whizzed out to awards, talk to some staff who've been involved in an event, and we absolutely used the priesthood inquiry. We didn't use images, but we used emotional words, which we've not talked about massively today. And just the result of hearing the stories from the staff and seeing their response and how grateful they were that we'd been able to do that is enough for me. And I think those people will then see the benefits. They will then use techniques, and it just rolls out, it just grows.
Yeah, I think it's been, it's that sort of snowball ripple effect of people, you know, seeing it firsthand and seeing how positive it is, you know, in the ward area, within teams. But I think the other thing that's really helped is we've kind of given this sort of loose rein to weave a priesthood inquiry into kind of everything here on the team. So we're weaving into our the way we're reviewing our incidents or events, into our complaints process, into our patient feedback. So it's kind of, yes, it's sort of infiltrating nicely. So I think everyone's getting some exposure and everyone's starting to see benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amanda, let's hear from you quickly about your experience, and then we'll go for a quick break before our final session.
So the only thing I was going to add was that I don't label it on the breast list, or when I do anything on the shop floor as what it is, and I don't explain it, we just do it. And I always am prepared for people to ask me what it is and what they're doing, and no one cares. They just don't want to know about the theory and the methodology. They just want the feelings and the emotions that go with it. I've got with me a couple of people in the chat were talking about the pictures and things, so I mean it's always handy, as people who work with me know, that it's always with me. So there's individual cards, but with COVID and people sharing things, they've been scanned in and laminated so you that they can be cleaned and passed between patients and everybody. But from the management side, recently myself and Matthew Size, who's on the call in the audience as well, went to the board, and they wanted to understand and feel they were trained and understand all the language, but the bit that changed the room for them to understand it was hearing how it landed with everybody else. And we ended up talking less about the theory behind it and more about how it made everyone feel and what they got out of it. So I think in medicine, we're very keen to understand the theory and know, and this is how this drug works and this is how this pump works. But the feelings and the emotions of it don't need an explanation. People just grab hold of how it made them feel and go with that. I'm going to stop talking because there's not enough time.
Oh, I know. There's just, we're flying through the day, aren't we? Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for joining us for the panel. Thanks for contributing to the discussions, and we'll make our longer conversations available as well.
Yeah, thank you for me too. And going back to the interviews, all of you contributed to those. Fantastic. We are going to take a 5-minute break because Don Bowick has joined us. So we were going to do a live interview in 5 minutes, if that's okay with you, Don. Thank you for coming. And then and that's the final session of the day. What a day it's been. But let's take a bit of precious time away from the screen just for 5 minutes, get a cuppa, and we'll see you at 5+. Thank you.